and the Seven Dwarfs. Once there lived a princess named Snow White. She was beautiful with snow-white skin, raven black hair, and smiling rose-red lips. Sadly, her mother had died when she was a baby, and after a time the king had married again, hoping to find happiness once more. But the new queen never smiled. She was cruel and vain. Every morning she stood before her magic mirror and said, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" "You are, my queen," was the magic mirror's answer each time. But one morning the queen asked, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" This time the mirror replied, "You are fair, my queen, it's true, but Snow White is much fairer than you." The queen was furious. She called for a woodsman and ordered him to take Snow White into the forest and kill her. The woodsman trembled in his boots, but he didn't dare say no. He took Snow White into the deep dark forest and told her everything. "Run for your life," he said. Poor Snow White fled through the forest. At last she came to a little cottage. She heard friendly voices, so she knocked on the door and went in. Inside were 7 merry little dwarfs sitting around the table eating supper. "Come and join us," they said, so Snow White sat down. Over supper she told them everything that had happened. "Why don't you live with us?" The dwarf said, "You will be safe here." Snow White agreed happily. The next morning the dwarfs all set off for work. "Goodbye, Snow White," they called. "We'll be back at supper time." Meanwhile, far away beyond the forest, the queen was asking her mirror, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" The mirror answered, "You are fair, my queen, it's true, but Snow White is still fairer than you." The queen turned pink and screamed with rage, "Show me where she is, I'll kill her myself." Snow White was picking berries in the forest when along came a lady wearing a big flowery hat. Little did Snow White know that it was the wicked queen in disguise. "Pretty combs for sale," said the lady. "Try one, my dear." She slid a comb into Snow White's hair, and Snow White fell to the ground. It was poisoned. Luckily, the dwarfs rushed back just in time. They took the strange comb out of her hair, and Snow White's eyes fluttered open. The queen was hiding and saw it all. "I'll just have to try again tomorrow," she snarled. The next day the dwarfs told Snow White to stay inside. She was busy cleaning the cottage when she heard a voice through the window. "Lovely apples for sale." It was a little old lady with a shawl pulled over her face. "It can't harm to talk to her through the window," thought Snow White. "I'd like some apples," she called. "Try one first," said the old lady. She gave Snow White an apple so rosy and red that she could not resist. But the apple was painted with poison. As soon as Snow White bit into it, she fell down dead. When the dwarfs found her, they cried and cried. Snow White still looked so beautiful that they made a glass coffin for her to lie in. They put the coffin under the trees and visited her every day. One day a prince came riding by. He saw Snow White lying there and asked the dwarfs about her. They told him the whole story. "She looks asleep, not dead," he said. He opened the glass coffin and lifted Snow White up. The piece of apple fell out of her mouth and she awoke. "Let's go and tell your father everything," the prince said kindly. So they did just that. The king smashed the magic mirror and sent the wicked queen away, and from that day Snow White and her friends lived happily ever after.